Hello and welcome to this next video in this series on animating type using Animate CC 2018. In this video I'm going to go over how you can make type look as though it's writing itself. And this is a pretty easy process. It's just basically a frame by frame animation where we erase parts of the letters until they build into a finished piece of writing. So we'll start off with a piece of lettering. We'll also talk about breaking the type apart so that it becomes raw shapes so that we can erase parts of them. We'll talk about adding frames or keyframes so that we can make the next change and so on. So let's get started. First of all, let's go ahead and create a new Animate CC 2018 Action 3.0 file. I have it set to 1280 by 720. Actually, I'm going to change that to 800 by 600. Doesn't really particularly matter in terms of the demonstration what size you're doing this at, by the way. I'm going to go ahead and press OK. So this is my new Animate file. I'm going to start off by choosing the text tool. I'm going to click on that once and just type the word O. I'm starting with a very small word so that we don't take too long doing this, but obviously you could do this with any length of word. And then on the right hand side I have a font called Marker Felt, which is the one I'm going to choose. Obviously you could use any font for this if you wanted to. We could also increase the size here if we wanted to of the type. If I go ahead and select it first, by dragging across here we can increase the size, and actually that's as large as it's going to go, but you could type in another number. Another way to change the size of the type is simply by using the free transform tool and then dragging out. So I'm going to do that actually, it's a little bit easier. Once we've got to this point, I'm going to convert this into a symbol. Modify convert to symbol. I'm going to choose graphic as the type and we're just going to call this O. And then once I've made it into the symbol, I'm going to go ahead and double click on it so I go inside the symbol. You can notice at the top here it says scene 1, and then we have the icon for the graphic symbol and the word O, the name of the symbol. So it shows us that we're working inside the symbol itself. You don't necessarily have to do the animation inside the symbol. You could do it on the main timeline. I just find oftentimes it's easier to have it as a symbol. So if I want to move the position later on, or I want to animate the overall thing, it's easier for me to do it that way. So once you've got this, the thing that I have selected now is a text box. I'm going to do Command B to break that apart. Command B is this: modify, break apart. And there's the keyboard shortcut, Command B. If you're working on a PC, it would be Control B. And then I'm just going to go ahead and break it apart again. So first of all, when we first broke it apart, it breaks it into individual characters. And then by breaking it apart again, we now have raw shapes. And you can see that by the fact that once it's selected, we have these tiny little dots all over the surface. Okay, once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and make a new frame. And I can make a new frame by simply selecting the next frame over and right-clicking or control-clicking to insert a keyframe. Another way to do it would be to, I'm going to do Command Z. If you use the keyboard shortcut F6, you can also add it. So that's what we're going to do throughout this because it will be a little bit quicker. The other thing I'm going to do is go down to the bottom here. In the bottom of my timeline, I'm going to turn on onion skinning, and you have two choices here. You either have onion skinning, which is solid, and then next to it you have one called onion skin outlines. And I'm going to choose the outlines one for the purpose of this exercise. Then with the eraser tool, I'm going to erase parts of the letter. So the purpose of the onion skinning here is so that I can see how far I've gone. So when I do the next keyframe, F6, remember, makes the next keyframe, I can go ahead and I can get a gauge as to how far I should erase the next time. So that looks pretty good. F6, we'll add another one. I'm also going to extend this part of the onion skinning out so I can see not only the previous frame but also the one before that. I'll erase a little bit more, add another keyframe, erase a little bit more, add another keyframe, so F6 each time I'm adding a keyframe. And this is the entire process. So I'm going to go through here and just erase parts of it, and then add another keyframe, erase parts of it, add another keyframe, and so on. So in theory, the exercise is very straightforward. It's really just a matter of erasing parts of the letter. So I've taken all that part out of it. F6 to add another keyframe. We'll take a little bit off the bottom. F6 again. F6 again, F6 again, F6 again, and you can see where we're going with this. And then I'll erase the rest of that. And then lastly, I'm going to do the letter O. I'm going to start at the top here and erase a chunk out of there. F6 to add another keyframe. And then F6 again. And you're just going to do this all the way through the two letters. So I'm not being particular about the curve on the end. Part of that is because it gets lost when you're actually doing it, when you're actually playing it, I should say. You know, you don't really see that edge too much because it's going by a little bit too quickly, but also because I just want to speed up through here so that we get the animation to a point where it's finished without you having to sit there for too long, because everything else is pretty self-explanatory. I'm just going to go through the entire letter. So I have one more to do, and then I'll leave that there. Some of these, you'll notice there's little dots here, so I actually need to find which keyframe those are on. I'm just going to go back through here and select these various keyframes. So these are actually showing up on the onion skinning. They're not part of it. I can tell that because it doesn't erase it. So I'm going to go back until I get to that point. You see that one's now gone. So let's try this anyway. So right now it's actually going backwards. If I play it, you can see that there's nothing happening actually at this point. And the reason for that is that on the main timeline, I don't have any frames. So let's just double click on the symbol one more time. So I have 25 frames here. So let's go and add 50 here, that way it'll go into it. Just add a frame into there and let's test it. So right now it's going backwards. If I want it to go the correct way, what I need to do is go back inside of this symbol, select all of the frames. So if I click on one, hold shift and then click on the end one. So start on the first one, sorry, and then end on the last one. And then either right click or control click and choose reverse frames. And then let's test it again. So now it's going the correct way around. I made a little bit of a mistake here. You can see that there's a little bit being erased where it shouldn't be erased on one of these previous frames. So I'd really want to go back and redo that. But for the purpose of this demonstration, I think you get the idea. If it's going a little bit too fast for you, you could always go in and add some additional frames. I can do F5 in between. So I select each keyframe in turn, add F5 in between. This will slow it down. The other way to slow it down is when you're initially erasing. If you were to use a smaller, like erase a smaller amount initially, then it would take longer obviously for it to animate through, so that would effectively slow it down. So once I've finished with this, I have 50 frames. So now when it plays a little bit slower. So that's it for this video. Hope this was informative, and I'll see you in the next one.